Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And as it's a Monday, we like to start the week with a feel-good story. And boy, do we have one for you now. There is a professor who is an expert in all things SNP and Scottish Government, and he says that the SNP is facing a nearly complete collapse. This is all to do with polls showing that there's no support, the membership is falling, the MPs and MSPs are retracting and pulling away from the party as much as they can, some retiring, some just abandoning the party. Then there's the ongoing police investigation. There's the possibility of future police investigations, plural. There's the general perceived level of nobody's listening and that there's a lack of ideas. And of course there's the alignment with the Greens, which is showing them up to be very, very lacking any kind of political nous, shall we say. Then of course there's the evidence with your own eyes that everything is failing. And the worst thing is, it's virtually all come together, this pinnacle of failure, under the watch of Humza Yousaf. It's all been within the last sort of 110 days of his reign of error. And so it looks like it could just be a matter of time before there is no SNP at all. And that would be such a shame, wouldn't it? Oh dear. Let's have a look at this story, see what this professor says and see if we agree with him. I think we kind of do. Here goes. So, Humza Yousaf's SNP faces near complete collapse amid party exodus and poll slump. The First Minister's time at Bute House has proven to be a disaster so far. And expert Professor James Mitchell fears that it's only gonna get worse. And you absolutely wonder how. He's losing all the big guns down at Westminster. So far, 7 have announced they're not going to stand at the next election. 1 has kind of been thrown out, not officially yet, but it's just a matter of a day or two. He's alienated half the party back up north in Bute House. In the Scottish Parliament. He's possibly going to have a big fight on his hands as he tries to punish Fergus Ewing, sort of days after they've all been to win his funeral. So he's got to deal with that. That'll cause a backlash. He's got rifts in his party left, right and centre because he refused after his coronation as potential King of Scotland, as he likes to think of himself, by not bringing in the likes of Kate Forbes or any of Ash Regan's supporters, anything like that. So he's split this party asunder himself. He hasn't got a single policy. Every policy they were applying is coming from the Greens. And so everything is failing because the Greens are, if it's at all possible, stupider, more ignorant and bigger failures than even Humza Yousaf. And boy, that's unbelievable that that's even possible. So yeah, it's no wonder the whole party is near collapse. And of course you've got falling membership numbers, you've got no money, and all the people who were leaving you money went in their wills. Well, they've all died and you've spent it. Fewer people are doing that now. Times are hard. Anyway, Humza Yousaf is facing a near complete collapse of his party amid an exodus of MPs and MSPs, dangerous slump in the polls. The new First Minister has inherited a chaotic SNP which is rife with infighting and which has been unable to shake off an ongoing police probe. They've got a civil war on their hands. I mean, you've got several civil wars really, because you've got a party divided, but not just on one particular issue, but it's divided on about 3 or 4 issues. It's going to fragment. This party is going to fall apart, and that'd be fun to watch. Is what I'm looking at. Anyway, recent surveys have Scottish Labour breathing down the necks of their rivals, with some even claiming that they will win more seats than the SNP at the next general election. You can only live in hope. Now, let's be honest, I do always maintain I hate all politicians, I hate all political parties. They're all awful. They're just awful in different ways. You've got, you're still going to have clowns in charge. It's just a different circus. But at least if Labour get in, they're going to sort of vaguely do something better than the SNP, even if it's only sheer luck. Because at least the Labour Party won't be trying to gild everything through the lens of independence. So there'll be less sort of push on that. Doesn't mean that they'll do anything well. It just means that they'll do things different. But they can't do things worse. Despite this, Mr. Yousaf has adopted a position of saying everything is fine when asked about his party. It reminds me of, remember Comical Ali during the Second Gulf War, when he was standing there and he was giving all these press briefings and saying, oh, the Americans, they're not getting through. The Americans aren't getting anywhere near Baghdad. And in the background of the press conference was the American tanks coming down the street, you know. And that's what this guy's doing. He's saying everything is fine as his house is on fire, you know. The Nationalists have also suffered embarrassing defeats in local council elections in recent weeks, with, I must say, more to come, including finishing third place in South Lanarkshire and losing the seat to Labour. They lost in North Lanarkshire too. They've lost all the SNP seats thanks to terrible mishandling of sexual misconduct by Jordan Linden. And there's more on that story to come out, let me say. They have. That's it. They've also had to deal with Angus MacNeil publicly accusing them of not trying hard enough to get independence. Now, Professor James Mitchell, who is Scotland's eminent expert in the SNP and Holyrood, told the Scottish Sun that this could be the beginning of the end for the party's dominance. He said, "It's like watching pieces fall off a once mighty building, while those in charge seem powerless to do anything about it. They are completely powerless because they don't know what they're doing. This is the trouble. They're morons. They've got no plan in place. They've got no political acumen. They've got no idea on how to stop everything that's going wrong. They don't know how to bring the party together and unify all the different factions because of a sheer lack of talent, of knowledge, of intelligence, of political ability. Nothing. Imagine everything you ever needed to be a politician, a successful politician, all the different skills. They haven't got any of them. And it isn't just that one person, Hamza Yousaf, doesn't have them. Virtually no one in the party has them. There's one or two that are very intelligent people, but of course that intelligence frightens the others. And so they will never rise to power because the SNP is a party of failures. You have to fail upwards to succeed. And that is why they've always got failures leading the party. Most worrying of all for the SNP leadership is a near complete collapse. Cannot now be ruled out. The SNP has now entered the danger zone that parties find themselves in after being in power over a long period of time and with declining reputation for competence. Have they ever been competent? I'm going to ask that question. I don't think they've ever been competent at anything. Except maybe convincing very stupid people to vote for them. That's the only thing they've managed. A total of 7 SNP MPs have already announced their intention to stand down at the next general election, despite public claims from the party that independence is closer than ever. This line was uttered by Nicola Sturgeon in her resignation speech, and yet the polls suggest otherwise, and the people of Scotland are definitely not being swung towards independence. They only have to look around. They use the evidence of their own eyes. My God, 16 years of SNP rule, and look at the state of everything in this country. It's not good. But a number of high-profile Nats are not carrying on at the House of Commons, including Deputy Leader Mary Black, former Leader Ian Blackford, and Stuart Hosey. Critics have claimed that they have jumped before they were pushed out by voters. Of course they have. They've looked at the polling, and there's a lot more of them. And even up in Holyrood, there'll be a lot of backbenchers up there, SNP backbenchers up there, opening their eyes, rather. I was going to say opening their mouths, opening their eyes to the fact that they aren't going to be there after the next Holyrood elections. You know, and they must be sitting there. They're looking at Hamza Yousaf every time he stands up and speaks and thinking, oh God, there's another 10 votes gone, you know. Anyway, Mr. Mitchell pondered this. I would like to call him Professor Mitchell, please. Professor Mitchell pondered this and said its own MPs know this about the voting decline. And while some may have decided to retire due to their age, they all know that independence is not in sight and that they will simply be going through the motions of remaining an MP even if they were to be re-elected. Yeah, pointless. A pointless existence. Standing on a campaign for a policy that they know themselves in their deepest heart that is never ever going to happen. It's an existential crisis, isn't it? They must be sitting awake at night going, why am I doing this? We're never going to succeed. These decisions to retire feed the same sense of decline. SNP MPs can read the polls as well as anyone else and be more aware than most of the party's internal problems. Unless something unforeseen and dramatic occurs, the next election may be a case of 2015 in reverse, and without the traditional base of support that the SNP used to rely on. Yeah, because it is moving away. People are moving away, and every scandal or perceived scandal that occurs is driving more people away, and also the fact that they cannot get any funding. And then there's all the court cases, all the all the police investigations for various matters. There's about 5 or 6 different police investigations happening, and as we've been doing on this channel, there's a possibility of another one coming up quite soon. So they could end up with maybe a full half dozen separate police investigations into the party and its members. It's not good, is it? Deputy Leader Keith Brown said, top-level analysis is always interesting, but, and we have seen this before in 2011, it ignores the reality of how the SNP government under a new First Minister is delivering what matters to people on the ground. Oh good, the NHS is great now, is it? Communications great, transport super, social care, how's that going? What about the education of their children? Is that now all sorted? Or is it still as it was before? A shambles. I think it's still a shambles, and I'm pretty sure the people of Scotland look around and they will also agree it's still a shambles. So Keith Brown is either lying or he's deluded. It's one of the two. For one thing, he is not telling the truth. He says, as households continue to be hammered by the Westminster-made cost of living crisis, again, not rising price of food caused the main part of that, and I think you'll find that mainly stems from the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, where about a third of all wheat in Europe is grown. So bread goes up, everything goes up. So it wasn't Westminster government that invaded Ukraine, was it? With almost half of adults struggling to make their mortgage or rental payments, the SNP is taking action where it can to support ordinary people. Really, we're looking at all the money you're wasting on trips and all your money you're wasting on your foreign embassies, for whatever reason you got that. There's so much money wasted. The £8.5 million a month you're spending on spin doctors in the NHS. Again, that could be better spent, couldn't it? Tell me, Keith Brown, what exactly are you doing? Because I've seen no evidence of you doing anything at all to help. He says, we remain the only part of the UK to have avoided strike action in the NHS. It was a close-run thing, and it's only because Humza Yousaf bent the knee and offered them a ball-busting pay rise so that he could continue to say that. But, of course, he's paying them out of public funds. So how are you raising the funds for that? Is it more taxes? You might not have had a strike in the NHS, but you're taxing people more and more and more, with more to come, with a 22.5% rise in council tax to pay for your mistakes. People of Scotland will have had enough, and believe you me, Keith Brown, you'll know that at the next election, and I'm coming up. So there you are. Next general election, autumn next year maybe. You're going to lose, I'm going to say, at least half the MPs, the SNP MPs at Westminster, possibly more. It's going to be, an absolute field of slaughter on that front. Then sort of every by-election that's coming up, and we've got to keep an eye on Rutherglen, that'll be up soon. You're going to lose all your by-elections, your council by-elections, MP by-elections, anything like that. You're going to lose all them. Then comes the big election for Holyrood in about 2 and a bit years, just over 2 years. That one will prove disastrous. And as long as Anna Sawar, the Labour leader up in Scotland, keeps his mouth shut, keeps his powder dry, doesn't say anything that's going to be divisive or disruptive, and lets the SNP fight the campaign for them. Basically, Labour need to do very, very little. Just maintain that they're still there. Get the odd thing up by Jackie Baillie. She seems to be the acceptable face of the Labour Party. And I think Labour will trounce, absolutely trounce the SNP. And we all sit there on the election night and, sitting there waiting for the election, watch the results as they come in and cheer every time an SNP, MSP loses their seat. I would suggest having a wee nip of whiskey or something when you do it, but God, you'd be drunk by 4 o'clock in the morning, wouldn't you? Anyway, I shall round off there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, do please hit that subscribe button. We're on our way back up to the next target, so it'd be nice to get there. Plus also, the more that we have, the broader it gets, the more the algorithm promotes, and then further the truth can be heard. So do please hit that subscribe button. Only about 30% of my regular viewers have. Let's up that rate, please. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and rejoice in the news that the SNP seem to be crashing and burning. Bye.